Okay, thank you so much. This session is now being recorded. Good morning, dear colleagues. Welcome to the Research Capacity Development Unit at the University of Johannesburg. My name is Lawrence, and I am delighted to be your moderator for today's workshop. I would like to start off by thanking all the attendees for taking their time to join us. And most importantly, I would like to thank our presenters, Miss Melanie, Miss Mary Ann, and Miss Andrea for their effort and preparing to give this presentation. Before I begin the session, again, I would like to go over a few housekeeping rules. If you do have any question during the presentation, please raise your hand. And if you'd like to speak or type a question, please type it in the chat box. And if you do have any question, please raise your hand and I will indicate to our facilitator so that they may address your question. And as I have indicated in the beginning that this session will be recorded and all the presentation slides together with the recording will be posted to our model communities for those that were not able to attend the session. A feedback survey will be sent during the session as well and would please ask all the attendees to please fill it in so that we may get insight on how useful this workshop is and how we may improve in the future. So before I begin the session, I would just like to introduce, as you can see there on the slide, I hope everybody can see it. We will be launching our research capacity development management system. It's a very comprehensive platform designed to utilize RCD unit to streamline and deliver event services, thereby optimizing the workshop and post-workshop experiences. So this is a very unique system. It's optimized one-stop shop access to RCD offerings. All our events, all our services will be offered on the system and it will be integrated on the ULink system. It's a very friendly interface, personalized registered event calendar. It's easy access to announcement and all the writing consultations, appointment and booking viewing will be used on this RCD system. As you can see, we will be launching it on the 14th of March from 1 to 2 and it will be via Microsoft Teams. So this is the new system that we'll be using to launch all our events and to host all our events and all our upcoming workshops and seminars. Thank you. So just to start again the workshop, I would just like to go over our facilitator's bio, Miss Melanie Lotter. Miss Melanie Lotter is a senior lecturer at the Department of Finance and Investment Management. She is
Sorry,
passionate.
Lawrence, to interrupt you.
Yes.
Please may you show us the facilitator's bios on the screen. Thank you.
Apologies about that. There you go. Okay, so as I was saying again, apologies for that. So Miss Melanie is a senior lecturer at the Department of Finance and Investment Management. She's passionate about financial planning, particularly estate and retirement planning, but also financial literacy. She holds a master's degree in financial planning law, LLM, and she is a certified financial planner and is currently reading towards a PhD finance at the University of Johannesburg. She is lecturing postgraduate students on financial planning, creating a new financial planning and financial literacy programs and research. She is a moderator and assessor for several institutions, financial planning, qualifications, and exams. She has presented at conferences and published articles on estate and retirement planning and financial literacy. And we also have our other facilitator, Ms. Mary Ann, is a graduate of the university and newly registered CFP. In addition to her role as an academic at the Department of Finance and Investment Management, she is also the first-year seminar coordinator for the BCom Finance program. She is a supervisor for the Research Honors module, and she's currently in her final stages of completing her master's, which focuses on Black tax and financial planning. She is a financial literacy enthusiast and spends her free time hiking, reading, and exercising. Her favorite quote is an African proverb that says, "If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together." Again, thank you so much. You may now proceed with the session. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is Melanie speaking. I'll do the first part of the presentation. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present this morning. I'm going to share my screen. If you can just confirm that you can see it. And then I'll try and keep watch on the chat screen, but if there's any questions, please let me know if I'm missing anything.
Yes, I will keep a lookout on the chat. And I don't know if you like questions during the session or you would like questions at the end of the session.
Yes, no, I'd like to have an interactive session. So please ask your questions. If you've got something in between, you don't have to wait till the end of the time. And I'm also going to ask some questions. So I'm hoping that everyone will be eager to share their answers. I just want to confirm if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Oh, can you see the screen? Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. My name is Melanie, and I'm very excited to discuss financial literacy with you this morning. So for the session this morning, just want to see, it doesn't seem like one change on my side. There it goes. So the agenda for this morning from the financial literacy point of view is we're first just going to do a quick overview of financial literacy, discuss savings and investment, and then Mary Ann Abiga will discuss budgeting and handling debt. So before I start, I was hoping that we can maybe get a feel from the attendees about what they think is financial literacy. So maybe in the chat, you can just write down very briefly, what do you think is financial literacy? So it doesn't have to be a formal answer, just your view on financial literacy in the chat box. I'll just give you a few seconds to think about it and just write it down. Okay, thank you very much for the first one. Understanding how to manage your finances, yes. Anyone else would like to share what's their idea of financial literacy or how they perceive financial literacy? Knowledge about finances, yes, very good, thank you. Let's maybe wait for a last one. The ability to navigate your way around finances with the goal of minimizing being debt, very good one, thank you. So financial literacy has got quite a big understanding or definition when we look at the big definition. So there's not a formal definition of financial literacy, but there are some authors that has tried to captivate the definition of financial literacy. A very common one is the OECD. I like the one from Rumant, where he says there's 5 categories of financial literacy, and it's everything. Thank you. I see there's another comment, effectively use of finances, very good. So according to Rumant's definition, there's 5 areas or aspects of financial literacy. It's financial knowledge. Many of you mentioned financial knowledge. The second one is also the ability to relay this knowledge. Okay, so to be able to share this knowledge with your friends. The third is the ability to manage personal finances. So if you have that ability to manage your own finances, the skills for sound financial decisions. So in other words, to make good financial decisions. So when you have the skills for that, and last is the confidence to plan according to your financial objectives. So financial literacy is got a very, it's like an umbrella over more than just financial knowledge. So if you say you've got financial literacy, it's the knowledge, but it's also the skills and the ability to apply it and to make good financial decisions. So what's the importance of financial literacy? So there's lots of research out that show that financial literacy is associated with higher levels of savings and emergency funds. It's associated with the use of financial planners to make better financial decisions. It's associated with financial health and confidence, increased financial satisfaction and well-being, better participation in the financial market, and it's also to plan for retirement and wealth accumulation. So there's many other more that's been listed from research, but these are the most crucial ones or important ones that financial literacy is associated with. And in one study specifically on students indicated that students with strong financial knowledge and skills tend to engage in healthier financial behaviors. Now, in South Africa, when we look at the financial literacy levels in South Africa, it is unfortunately not a very positive picture. And the aim is that we hope to change it so that we have a better financial literacy across the country. But currently it shows low levels of financial literacy. So a longitude study showed that there's low levels of financial literacy among South Africans. And this study was done over a period of time. It also showed that young people, and particularly students, exhibit the lowest level of financial literacy. There's also significant differences based on age, education, location, and race. And unemployed and studies, unemployed and students show the largest financial literacy gap compared to those who are employed and those who are retired. It also showed that less educated and lower income individuals display lower financial literacy. What's the focus on students? There's been several studies done in South Africa on students, where it shows, one study showed that only 15% of university students were found to be financially literate. Another study showed that final year diploma students and accounting students were actually found to have low levels. And that students that have non-business modules or disciplines have lower financial literacy than those that are in finance or business-related concepts. So the majority of the studies show that financial education is suggested for students to improve their financial literacy. When we look at the key concepts of financial literacy, we can also note, I just want to note that financial literacy is also based on basic to advanced. As we go through our financial journey, we will gain basic financial concepts and we will build on it to more advanced. But where we start is to look at budgeting, debt management, savings and investment, retirement, and insurance and risk management. So today we will look at the areas that's most applicable to students, and we're looking at savings, investment, budgeting, and handling debt. Now, we all know this, the saying, money doesn't grow on trees. We often say, you will hear this from parents, will say money doesn't grow on trees. But the reality is that money will grow if you are consistent and you are disciplined. Then you can cultivate your dreams. And that is the idea of financial literacy, is to be able to get to that point. Now, when we look at savings and investments this morning, we are going to look at what is savings and investments. What's the difference between it? A lot of people use it interchangeably, but there's a difference between savings and investments. What is the average savings rate in South Africa? What is the purpose of financial goals, the purpose of emergency fund, the difference between savings and investments, and then important concepts that we need to understand when we look at savings and investment, and that's inflation, interest, and liquidity. So when we look at savings and investments, we studies have indicated that investments are essential components of building wealth and financial stability. It also offers you a sense of financial independence. It gives you opportunities to do things. It prepares you for unforeseen expenses. We all have examples of unforeseen expenses in our own lives. And ultimately, it enables you to achieve your own goals. Now, in South Africa, we can look in September 2024, South Africans' gross savings rate was 13.7%, and it's lower compared to other countries. But this takes into account all savings. It is the gross savings rate. So it's households, companies, businesses, all of that. Now, if we have to look at a household savings rate, quickly get into your chat box again, and what do you think is the average household savings rate in South Africa during 2023? So what do you think? I've mentioned some suggestions here. Do you think it's 15%, 10%, closer to the gross savings rate, 5%, or less than 1%? If you guys want to guess, you can write it down on a paper, or you can just give it to me in the chat box. What do you think is the average household savings rate in South Africa? Less than 1%, thank you. 5%, 5%, 1%. Thank you for everybody who is participating in the chat box. So in South Africa, it's actually a very not a good picture. If we look at, did I not go in the wrong way? Sorry. Sorry, where we actually look at that the average household savings rate is less than 1%. And that was in 2023, and it has even dropped now in the beginning of 2025. So although the gross savings rate is at 13%, but the household savings rate is less than 1%. And also, this includes your compulsory savings like pension and provident funds. So the reality in South Africa is that we do not have a good savings culture. And that doesn't mean it has to be yours, and you can change it. So why are we saving? Okay, so if you sit there, you can maybe say, and you can also put it in the chat box, or you can write it on pieces of paper, but you've all at varsity, so you've got goals for yourself in the future. But where do you see yourself in 5 years, or 10, or 20 years? Where do you see yourself? What would your financial security look like in the future? Where do you see yourself? And not maybe where do you want to see yourself? Maybe that's the correct question. Where do you want to be? What do you want to be your financial security to look like in the future? Okay, so when we look at savings and investments, the most important reasons that we would save is, first of all, we have to save for emergencies. That is something that can derail all your plans if you haven't made provision for it. Debt avoidance. Okay, the more savings you have, the less you have to rely on debt. Okay, currently, the majority of students have high student loans. That's a fact. That's a fact across the globe. Retirement. In South Africa, we as individuals are responsible for our own retirement planning. There's no government retirement planning. So you as a person need to make sure that you plan for your own retirement. And the moment you have to start is the moment you start earning an income. Financial security, that's the question we came back to earlier. Where do you see yourself? And jot it down. It's very important that you actually write these things down and go say, where do I see myself and how do I get there? Peace of mind, giving you that financial safety net. And then obviously, what is your personal financial goals? Now, financial goals can be anything. You can have, and it changes as you go through your different life stages. As students, we have very different financial goals of someone that just started a family. So as students, it might be our graduation expenses, it might be a driver's license, it can be students' fees. Once you start working, you meet someone, you start saving for a wedding, you want to have a nice holiday, you want to start buying a house. When you start having children, you're looking at your children's education. So your financial goals can change the whole time. But you will have consistently, you'll have something to save for. So maybe now you can put down on paper, or you can put down in a chat box, what is your financial goals right now? Last year we had students that said, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. What are your financial goals right now? What do you have to save for? What is there that you would like to save for? Some students have suggested a bus ticket back home for the holidays. That's their financial goal. That is what they would like to save for. Or it's a new passport. Some students save for a new passport. Some students are saving for graduation. I've just attended a graduation last week, and I must say all the graduates look so beautiful in their outfits, but that's something to save towards. Okay, so as a student, where are you sitting now? What are your financial goals? What are you saving for? And these are important to jot it down and to write down, what do you need to save for? So we also need to look at emergency funds. Maybe again, you can write down in the chat, or you can write down on a piece of paper, what has happened to you in the last year where you had unexpected expenses, because it happens to all of us. Maybe you got sick, you had medical expenses, or you had a family emergency, you had to travel home, so traveling cost home, stolen or broken laptop. So if you had to ask yourself here today, if you have a laptop and it gets stolen today, can you replace it? If you have a cell phone, okay, so do you have any emergency fund for unexpected expenses? Unexpected study resources. Okay, we start in the beginning of the year. As a student, you have lots of expenses, but now your textbook you didn't anticipate. So it is all of those things. Once you start working, you still have unexpected expenses. You might get retrenched. You might be in an accident, illness, burst geyser, theft. So these are all the things that you need to save for. So the question here is, have you experienced unforeseen expenses? How did you manage it? How would you have liked to manage it? By having a savings account that you can manage these things. Okay, so another quick question. So back in the chat, what percentage of the F&B middle class income customers have sufficient emergency savings? Okay, so what percentage of the individuals? 40%, 20%, 10%, less than 6%. How many people do you think have sufficient emergency savings? Maybe you can also ask yourself, do you have sufficient emergency savings? Okay. So what is
Say
the
less than
study?
6.
Say again?
Less
Oh,
than
yes,
6.
sorry, I missed thank you for all the entries in the chat box. Thank you. Yes. So what does the study show? The FNB study in 2021 showed that less than 6% of the middle income customers has sufficient emergency savings. So that is quite a daunting picture. And what does it show us? So you might be, as a student, and once you start working, you might be financially on track to your financial goals. So you might be on a good savings pathway towards saving for a house, or you might, but the moment you have an unexpected expense and you do not have provision for that, it can derail your entire plan. So that's why an emergency fund is very important. And an emergency fund can happen in various ways. It might be family emergency. It might be, we just discussed all of those. Then another study in 2021 showed that financial stress was the biggest cause impacting the mental well-being for more than 50% of the participants. Okay, so these are all statistics indicating to us what the financial implications can be for individuals if they don't have good financial literacy, if they don't have enough savings, if there's constant stress about their finances. So let me ask you this question. Do you have any savings for unexpected expenses? And then the second question that you can maybe add in the chat box is, how much do you need? So it's very difficult. Students don't have a fixed income. Students sometimes don't have an income at all. They rely on study loans. They rely on bursaries. They rely on allowances. But what do you think you need? How much do you think you need to cover for emergencies? What do you think you need? You can type in anything in the box that you think. Maybe if you work on allowances, do you need a month's allowance to save to protect yourself against unforeseen expenses? So you guys can also type in the chat box if you want to add to the conversation. What do you think?
Somebody typed in the Q&A saying I'm currently saving for my tuition fee.
Say again.
Somebody typed in that Miriam in the Q&A section. She said I'm currently saving for my tuition fee. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the contribution. Yes, that's very important. It's one of those things that we need to make sure you don't rely on debt. Thank you for that. So the other comment in the chat box was to say, yes, I do save for unexpected expenses. Well done for saving. And it says 6 months. You need at least 6 months. Another person says, yes, I'm saving, and you need 3 months. Okay. So well done if you are saving for unexpected expenses. I must say, when I was a student, I didn't have any savings for unexpected expenses. So I'm very, very proud of these students that say they have. But how much do you need? So it's a very big debate, but the recommendation is 3 to 6 months of your expenses. So if you had to go look at what your monthly expenses, what is your monthly what do you need a month? You need to save at least 3 to 6 months of those expenses or your income for unexpected expenses, and that is quite a big amount if you have to look at it. But that is to ensure that you do not get derailed when there is unexpected financial expenses. So when we look at savings and investments, we said earlier it's used interchangeably, but it's not always clear what's the difference between them, but there is a very specific difference. And the difference is mainly attributed to the level of risk, the term for how long do you keep it, and then the objective, why are you keeping it? So for savings, you might have a different objective than what you would have for investments. Now, when we look at savings, we'll first look at savings and then we'll look at investments. Savings is putting your money away for a specific need or emergency in the short term. Okay, so I'm saving money for my studies. The one participant said she's saving for her studies. So that will be her savings. It's in the short term. She will need to be able to access it when she needs to pay for her studies. Okay, so maybe some of you are graduating and you're saving towards your graduation, then that will be a short-term saving. Those of you who do emergency funds, that will be a short-term saving. It will be it will be saving. Why would you think emergencies is a short-term saving? Can anyone tell me? Why do you think your emergency saving should be short-term and it should be a saving? Okay, maybe I'll ask the question after we discussed it again. So savings is low risk. Okay, there's no risk. It is a very low risk of losing your money. So if you put in 10,000, you're going to keep your 10,000 plus interest. Okay, you're not going to lose it. It's easy accessible. If I need it tomorrow because I have an emergency, I can get access to it. The disadvantages is that, thank you for the comments there. You need to access it anytime. Yes, that's 100% correct. So it's short term, you need to be able to access it. You don't know when you have unexpected expenses. It might be tomorrow, it might be in 3 weeks, it might be in 4 months. Might not be this year, but you never know. So you need to be able to access it anytime. But because it's low risk and you can access it easily, it's also a low return. Okay, it's not something that you are planning. It's not savings, it's not for retirement. Because when you plan for retirement, it's long term and you want a higher return. Okay. Savings also requires discipline. Why? Okay. What's the biggest problem with your emergency fund or your savings in your bank account? And this is especially, where the discipline comes in, is you can take it out anytime. Just as you need it tomorrow, if you have a family emergency tomorrow, you might also take it tomorrow if all your friends decide to go out and you don't have enough money budgeting for going out, and you take some of your savings. So that's the other challenge, is that you also need discipline not to touch that money, to leave it in that account. So a study in 2022 from Business Tech indicated that only one third of their readers do not save at all. They have no savings at all. And 70% indicated that they save less than 50% of their monthly income. So that they save, those that are saving less than 15%. So maybe you can ask yourself, where do I fall in the study? And you can also put it in the chat box if you're happy to reveal your answers. Maybe you are not saving. Okay, sometimes it's good to acknowledge it. Or you can say, I am saving, but I'm saving less than 15%. Or you're one of the more disciplined people, and you can say, I am actually saving more than 15% per month. Thank you for the answers there. Some students say that they are saving at the moment. Well done for saving. Some saying that they save less than 15, some say they save more than 15. If you are one of those that say, I'm not saving, do not worry, okay? There's always an opportunity for you to change this, and it's never too late to start saving. Myself, I also only started saving much later, not when I was supposed to. So there's always a turning point for when you want to start saving. So if you want to be proactive today, you can say, okay, I am not saving. Or if you're not saving enough, maybe I am saving, but I'm not saving enough. What amount can I start saving today? So if you're not saving, what can you save today? Maybe the answer is nothing. Maybe you just do not have capacity, which is also a reality for many students. But then this is something that you need to take into account when you start earning your first salary. What is it that I can start saving? What amount or what percentage? You can say, okay, I'm going to challenge myself to start saving at least 5%. Okay, I can't do 15%. I do not have, my income is smaller than my expenses, but maybe I can start with 5%, or maybe I can start with 50 Rand a month or 100 Rand a month. So maybe also ask yourself today, what can you start saving? Where can you start saving, and what? But put it down, okay? One of the most important things when we start about financial literacy or making those changes is putting an amount to it, okay? Putting a percentage to it. When? Not tomorrow, today, or next month. You know, what is when? So you ask yourself how much, when, and how you're going to do it. So it makes it easier to practice it. So it's very difficult to put savings in your same account that you are using for your expenses. It's very difficult to keep track and to make sure that you keep that money separately. So a very good practical tip is to have a separate account for your savings. So maybe one account is where you pay all your expenses and pay for when you go eat out or when you go do grocery shopping, but then have a separate account for your savings. This helps you to differentiate between what money is for your expenses and your living expenses and what one is for saving. Then if you struggle to ensure that you allocate the amount, add an automatic debit order to your account so that that amount goes off automatically, because I know a lot of students do not earn a fixed income, so it's very periodic. You might be every 30 months, or you earn a small amount this month and that month, so it's not always possible. But the moment you start earning income, these are practical tips that you can apply to ensure that you are saving every month. And then another important tip, and I'm sure Mary Ann will also touch on it, is when you do your budget and there's money left at the end of the month, at the end of the budget, don't just leave it hanging, because what will happen to it? It will be used. Add it to your savings so you can allocate where it must be going. So now we looked at savings. What is investments? So investments, the difference between savings and investments is savings is for short term, it's for money easily available, but investment is a commitment to real and financial assets. It's when you want to start building wealth. So that is over the medium or long term. So earlier when you ask yourself, where do you see yourself in 5, 10, or 20 years? What do you want to see yourself? Then we start looking at investment. If you said you see yourself with a good financial stability, you own a house, you've got a car, and you've got a good savings account, a good investment account, then this is where you're looking now, is how to get to that wealth, accumulating wealth. So in this case, we are looking at products, financial products that's got a medium or high risk, okay? Because it's for medium or long term. And in this case, we often need a financial advisor to assist us to get the right product for our needs. So savings accounts are usually much easier. You get a savings account at your bank. You can get a savings account, or you can get a small fixed deposit that you can use for 6 months or 3 months if you don't want to touch your money. But when we look at investments, we're looking at more complex financial products out there that you can use. The advantages of this is it gives you a higher return. So if you put in 10,000, where we said earlier, you get a small return, you get a much higher return. You can also select your own investment portfolio. Everybody's got the knowledge to do this. So that's where we often use a financial advisor to assist us. And that is what we need to start building wealth. So when you sit here today, you can have a savings account. You can start savings towards your emergency fund and your short-term financial goals, but you can also start investing. Put a little bit of money away to start investing for your long term. The disadvantages of investing is it's high risk. So there is a possibility that you can, fluctuation in the markets. The fees can be higher depending on your financial product. It's often expensive to start. You can't always start with small amounts in certain financial products. You need a bigger amount to start with. And some of the products are very complex, so you need someone to advise you to make sure you make the right decision. So examples of investments is if you invest in a unit trust for your children's tertiary education in 10 years' time. So when you get married, you've got children, you start planning for their tertiary education, or if you want to send your children to a specific school, and you need to start save for that. Investment in a unit trust if you plan to buy a car in 5 years' time, or if you have a retirement annuity, investing in a retirement annuity for your retirement. So there's lots of examples of investing. You want to buy your first house, or you want to pay off, build up a big deposit for that. So the difference between real and financial investments is real financial investments is like an investment property or rental property, gold coins. And then financial investment assets is not what you can see, but they've got a value, like shares, listed shares in a company or collective investment scheme. Now, here's just a summary of the differences between saving and investment. So I use the pink for your, we all like to have a savings, little where we can save, like our children say, yeah, put away all your coins as an example. And then obviously investment is more your growth, your wealth products. So if you look at the two, you can say that the one is short-term versus long-term. Short, low risk versus high risk. Your savings also, we all talked about, it needs to be liquid. You need to be able to access it immediately, because if you have an emergency. And then also the examples of savings versus investment, you might say for your graduation, which is at the end of the year or next year, May, you need to bus ticket home in December, you want to get an ID card or a passport, where investments is more for retirement. If you want to get real estate, you want to have financial security. So these are just a snapshot of what you can look between the differences between savings and investment. So just to give you another example is if you had to look at the money spent between savings and investment, you'll see that your interest is much lower for savings as investment. So this is actually not a very good example in terms of savings will never be for long term. Okay, savings is for short term. Graduation is next year, May. Bus ticket is end of December. Your emergency fund is for any time. So this is my short term pocket of money. But this is just to explain to you the difference in terms of the return. Another important concept.
There is a question.
Yes.
There is a question in the chat box. It says, any recommendations for companies to use for investment?
So listed companies to invest.
Yes, any recommendations here for companies to use for investments?
So unfortunately, that's not a question that can be answered just like that. When you look at investments, and that's why you often also need to get a financial advisor to look at the whole profile. Like, what are you investing for? What is the long-term investment? What is your diversity? If you've got shares currently in, for instance, financial services, how do you make a diversity in terms of also to look at mining, for instance? So look at different types of industries when you invest. Also looking at what is the current performance of companies. So it's not just a quick answer and to make a suggestion like that. I think it will be a poor recommendation for me just to make suggestions like that. But and unfortunately, the purpose is also not to give advice here. But when you do look at listed companies, I assume that's what you're referring to, you need to look at what are you looking to invest to, what does your diversity look like in terms of what industries have you already invested in, and then what is the purpose of your investment. I hope I answered that question as best as if it's fine. So okay, thank you. So getting back to investing and saving and investing, there's three things that we need to take into account. And the first is, thanks, Mary Ann, for the comment there. Also, make sure that you understand interest and inflation and liquidity. Okay, so when we look at interest, we get simple interest and we get compound interest. And when we say savings, that's why it's never too late to start saving, because your saving today compounds over time so much that if you start saving today and you in your early 20s, and someone else starts later in their late 20s with a much bigger amount, you will have saved more because of that compound effect of saving for much longer, and where you get interest on interest. So if we look at an example, and I hope that I can explain the difference between simple and compounded interest. Simple interest is, if I invest 10,000 Rand, then I get 10% on my 10,000 Rand every year. That's simple interest. Okay, so in year one, I have 1,000 Rand. In year two, I have still on my original amount 10% on 10,000, 1,000 Rand. In year three, it's the same. So you only get 10% on your original amount. That's simple interest. So at the end of year three, I have, I have 13,000 Rand saved. Okay, that is simple interest. If I look at compound interest, it is interest on interest. So in year one, I have my 10% on 10,000, which gives me 11,000. So in year two, I get 10% on 11,000, which gives me 12,100. And in year three, I have 10% on 12,100, which gives me 13,310. So do you see that it's interest on interest? So that's the compounding effect if you save over a period of time. You're not just growing the original money that you're putting in, but you're growing in money on the money that you've earned. And that's the impact of compound interest over long term. So if we use this example and we say, okay, but after 30 years, okay, so now some of you might sit here and say, okay, well, compound interest after 3 years is 13,310, okay, 13,000. If we do the simple interest, it was 13,000. So there's only 300 Rand difference. It doesn't look like a lot. Does it look like a lot? Doesn't, okay, after 3 years. But what is the scenario after 30 years? Okay, so after 30 years, if you put it in 10,000, nothing else, you just put in 10,000. After 30 years, your simple interest will be 40,000. Okay, but your compound interest will be 174,000. So this will be the value of your investment. So this gives you an idea of the impact of contract interest. I see there's a question. The idea of contract interest is really great, but it's hard to get banks to often. Okay, so what it actually means is if you put money in your savings account, okay, if you put money in a savings account at the bank, that will already be compound interest. Okay, so if you put your money in, you earn interest on interest. So if you get or an investment product, these are all interest on interest. So if you just put it, if you keep the money and just get 10% every year, say for instance, I get 10%, that is just a simple example of simple interest, but all investment products have compound interest. So I hope I'm answering your question in terms of financial products. So even your savings account at the bank will give you interest on interest. So they will give you interest on the amount that you have in your bank account every year. Okay. And that's what's the importance of starting saving. It's just hard because as students, we start with small amounts. Okay, so we don't see the difference. But this is just to show you over time, it does make a difference. And as you get bigger amounts, you can get bigger interest on it. Thank you very much for the comment. That's 100% right. The biggest way to see compound interest if you don't withdraw the monthly interest. Okay, so that's the whole point. So you need to leave the money there because then you get interest on interest. So what is inflation? So inflation means, and I think many of you have already experienced inflation. Okay, if you just think about what did you pay for bread 5 years ago versus what you pay for bread now. And in the last few years, we've really experienced inflation with our grocery shoppings. And this is a good example of how it happens from 1980 to 2020, what you could put in your trolley, okay? So what you could put in your trolley for 500 Rand in 1980 was there was not enough space in your trolley, okay? Over the years, now, if you had to go to the shops, what can you put in your trolley for 500 Rand? Very little compared to before. So how does it make sense? The idea behind this is that prices of products increase, and that is called inflation. It increased with time. So what you paid for bread last year is not going to be the same as paying for bread this year. So if you don't put your money in the bank, you only had 500 Rand every time you take your 500 Rand, you're actually losing money because your money is not growing with interest, but the products that you are paying are increasing with inflation. So if we just use this as an example, and this is prices of items in 1961 versus 2021. Okay, it just shows you Millie Meal used to be 90 cents. In 2021, it was 49 Rand, sorry. Okay, a kilogram of apples used to be 23 cents a kilo. In 2021, it was 15 Rand 76. So this is just to explain how inflation goes up. And you need to understand inflation. Why is it important to understand inflation? If you inherit 10,000 Rand today, and you take your 10,000 Rand and you put it under your mattress, will that 10,000 Rand still have the same value next year or the year thereafter? It won't, because inflation has gone up and everything that you want to purchase has gone up, but your 10,000 Rand has stayed the same. However, if you take your 10,000 Rand and put it in a bank, in a savings account, it would have increased with interest and keep track of inflation. And that's why we need to understand the role of inflation when we look at interest, savings and investment. Liquidity is another concept that's very important. So if you look at these two pictures, from which glass can you drink faster? Okay, we can all see that you can drink much faster from the liquid glass than from the ice. The ice you're going to waste. It's like a slush puppy. You have to mix it and mix it and mix it and wait for it to melt down so you can actually drink it. And this is what liquid assets means. Liquid asset means, can you take out the money immediately? Let me give you an example. If you have a savings account and you have money in your savings account and you have an emergency, you can drink from that glass immediately. You can take your money out of your account immediately. Thanks for the question. I'll answer your question now. But if you have a house and you have a very big financial situation where you need to sell your house, will you get the cash off your house immediately? No, you won't. It will take several months to get your money. First, you need to put your house on the market. Then you have to get a willing buyer. Then you need to agree with the price of the willing buyer. Then you need to lodge the sale at the conveyancing offices. Then they need to go. So it's a whole process. It will most probably take 3 to 6 months to get your money from the house. So it's not a liquid asset. Where your savings account is liquid. Let me use another example. So shares is liquid because we can sell shares, but sometimes it's not a good time in the market to sell your shares. Okay, your advisor will sell. It's not a good time. You need to wait it out. If you sell it now, you will lose money. Okay, so you need to look at the liquidity of your investments and your savings. So this is very important. Can you have your emergency fund cannot be in your house, okay, because it's not available immediately. Okay, you need to be able to have it available immediately. Just to get to the question, one student asked, how can one protect their savings investment from inflation? So it's a very good question. So you need to make sure that you invest your savings in an account where the interest rates match inflation. Okay, so if you look at a savings account, you need to say, what interest can I get on my savings account? What does the bank offer? Say the bank offers 5%, inflation is currently also at 5%, then you match your inflation. Obviously, when you're going to a higher return investment product, you also need to look at what's the risk that goes with it. Okay, so you need to also, once again, you need to look at what is the money for. Okay, so if it's long term, you can go in investment with a higher return, it's higher than inflation, but then obviously it needs to be able to stay there for longer, and you need to be able to not take the money immediately. If it's something where you need to take out the money immediately, the interest is much lower. But that's the difference. So if you take your funds and you keep it in your house, you protect it yourself, you're not going to protect it against inflation. And that's why it's always important to look at what's the interest rate that they offer. So if you look at the bank, your current account might not give you a proper savings rate, but if you move it to a savings account, you might get a better interest rate. Okay. Getting back to liquidity. So liquidity refers to how easily or quickly we can convert our asset to cash without paying a hefty fee, and to make sure it's the right time to move it. So in other words, shares might be available immediately, so it can be a liquid asset, but you also need to be able to look at what is it the right time. So liquid assets might be your savings account, money from a 6-month fixed deposit. So if you have emergency fund for now, but your savings account for the end of the year or your graduation for next year can be in a fixed deposit, because you know you don't want to touch that money. So then it's a good idea to put it in a fixed deposit, a 6 months one. Is the investment in a rental property liquid? No, it's not. Okay, because if you have to sell the rental property, we just discussed it, it will take a bit of time to do that. So we look at the summary of savings and investments. What's the difference between them? We looked at compound interest, inflation, and liquidity. And now some of you might say, how is this relevant to me? I'm a student, I do not have an income. Or currently my expenses exceeds my income. And that is a big reality for a lot of students. But remember, in order to make changes, you need to be informed. You need to have financial knowledge. You need to know when to make the right decisions. And yes, you might not have an income now, but you might get income soon. You might get a position soon. You might get a bursary soon. Whatever the situation might be. And then you need to know how to apply your financial knowledge to make the right decision. So financial literacy, as we said earlier, is how to best manage your money, and how can you have all those positive relationships that we looked at earlier. So just before I give over to Ms. Mary-Ann Abigo, I just want to ask you to reflect on a few things after we did this session. Is what small changes can I make today? What can I do today to make a change in how I manage my money? What unnecessary expenses can I cut? Okay, so what do I currently have? Do I have a gym membership that I actually do not use? Okay, do I spend too much money on facial products? Maybe I need to do more research and see, okay, what is the right thing for me? I'm using examples, but what can I do? Then the other very important thing is, how do the spending habits of those around me influence my money spending? A lot of students are very subjective to peer pressure and how their friends spend their money, friends that are going out too much, spending too much money on takeaways and eating out. So look at this scenario around you and see how are you being influenced at the moment, and what changes can you make for better financial outcome. Okay, and then very much I would like to encourage you, if you haven't done it, to maybe enroll for the Be Money Wise financial literacy course at UJ that will take you through all the basic concepts of financial literacy. Thank you. Any last questions before we hand over to Ms. Mary-Ann Abigo?
There is no question. We have no questions. Yeah, just people thanking you for the presentation, and thank you again, Miss Melanie, for the presentation and for your insights. With this, we really do appreciate it so much, and I'm sure all the participants really do appreciate, and I'm sure they did get a lot of insights with regards to financial literacy. And thank you again for honoring our invite, Miss Melanie. So in that regard, I would like to hand over to Miss Mary-Ann Abigo to proceed with the other part of the presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you. You may proceed.
Sorry. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I love talking about financial literacy, so I do hope you engage. And thank you, Melanie, for your presentation. I also found myself learning from bits that you've presented. I just want to confirm if you can all see my slides in presentation mode.
They're not in presentation mode yet.
Okay. Is it in presentation mode now?
You can, but I think you have two screens. You can put it on display settings there.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I can remove the second screen, sorry.
Yes. If you can just click on display settings, I think then you can.
Okay. Display settings, and then is it fine now?
Yes, it's perfect. Now we can see it in presentation form. All the participants, please just confirm if you can see her slides in presentation forms with a thumbs up. Okay, perfect. You may now proceed. Thank you.
All right. In my segment, I will be touching on budgeting and handling debt. So currently, I can't see the chat box with how I've presented my slides. So if there are any questions, or when you do answer my questions, please feel free to just say the answers out if that's possible.
Okay, I'll also be monitoring it as well from my side.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. So Melanie has spoken about how it's important to save and invest your money. How to know what you can save and invest is by budgeting. Now, budgeting in simple terms is defined as the process of reflecting on spending decisions made by an individual or a household, and it is more commonly done on an annual basis. There are 5 steps when it comes to setting up a budget. The first step is to set financial objectives. So this is you gathering information and kind of deciding for yourself, what do you want to do when it comes to your finances? The second step is to calculate the estimated income from all sources. So whether you're a student receiving an allowance or a student who works part-time and is receiving a salary, you need to consider all those monies that are coming in. Step 3 would be to identify all your expenses. So this is regardless of how small the expense or insignificant you think it is, write it down because it is going to impact your budget. Step 4 involves comparing your income and expenses. This is where you see if your income is in excess of your expenses. We find that if your income is in excess of your expenses, then it means you're in a good position because that means that that extra money can now be saved. If you find that your income is less than your expenses, then you have a little bit of a problem because now what you identify is that you can't even pay for all your expenses. So you'll need to look towards making cuts. The final step of preparing a budget is to regularly revise or revisit your budget. Remember, a budget is not something you prepare and just leave it idle. You need to constantly look at it and compare the actual to the allocated expenditure. Because if there are differences this month or the following month, then you'll need to make the adjustments so that your budget can reflect those changes. So when it comes to budgeting and identifying your spending behaviors, it's important to know what type of person you are when it comes to spending money. So there are 4 common categories. The first is the impulsive. This is a person who acts on emotion. They're a self-esteem spender. For lack of a better word, you could call them a shopaholic. This is someone who says, I'm going to the store to buy bread, and then ends up coming home with lots of plastics because they got excited. They had the emotion from the deals or the promotions that they saw at the store. Then we have the new generation or millennial. So this is someone who spends money to kind of please people around them and to conform to the time. So if everyone is doing this, they'll find themselves trying to do what everyone else is trying to do. Then the third spending behavior is the hoarder or the gatherer. So this is someone who at all costs avoids spending money. It's not that they don't have debt or that they're saving. They just do everything not to spend their money. So they put it in the bank or they take cash and leave it under a pillow, not countering for inflation or any interest when it comes to just using cash. So this is someone who just hoards money. They don't use it effectively. And then the last spending behavior is the ideal, which would be the saver or the budgeter. So this is the deal seeker. This is someone who plans when it comes to their spending. So in the beginning of the year, when they're setting out their budget, they decide, okay, when Black Friday comes in November, this is the spending that I'm going to, or this is the goal that I'm going to look towards. Perhaps I want to buy a new sofa or flat screen TV. I'll set that goal at the beginning of the year as opposed to waiting for Black Friday to come and then just spending on the deals that I see. So the saver, the budgeter, is someone who consciously spends through making a budget. Why is it important to follow a budget? It is important to follow a budget as it makes you aware of your spending habits and it enables one to meet financial goals and objectives through accurate planning by prioritizing spending. So remember, when you're budgeting, it's important to have a priority list. Priority list in the sense that some expenses are more important than others. So your rental payment will be more important than your entertainment expenditure. So it's important to have that priority list. What are the key elements or features of an effective budget? So firstly, it's very important to be realistic. Do not try to make a budget just because you think this is what everyone else is doing or this is the ideal. Make the budget tailored to you. So if you find that you do spend out of your 5,000 Rand allowance, you spend 1,000 Rand on takeout every month and you want to become conscious when it comes to your spending, don't now decide that I'm no longer going to spend that 1,000 Rand on takeout. I'm going to make it 0. That's going to be very difficult for you to follow because it's unrealistic. Your normal habits was spending 1,000 Rand. So be realistic. If you want to make the cut, maybe cut it to 800 Rand as opposed to 1,000, but do not be realistic by cutting drastically. You'll find it hard to follow and demotivated to even follow a budget. It's important to set financial goals, whether your financial goal is to save some extra money or if it's to pay off expenses or debt that you currently have. Your financial goals will be different from everyone else. It's just important to see where your money goes and where you need to make cuts or where you need to set goals for yourselves. Then it's important to identify all the miscellaneous expenditure. So this is even when you're spending money on data or airtime. These are expenses that you think that it's not always there. It's important to also take record of them because you may need to make cuts or adjustments or look at more cheaper options when it comes to those purchases. What you find is when you're buying airtime data, when you urgently need it, you're not actually looking at effective or promotional items when it comes to those expenses. Then it's important to categorize your expenditure according to the level of importance, because as I mentioned with the priority list, if you find that you need to make cuts, you'd cut from the bottom and not the top where you have your important expenses. It's important to also draft your budget to 0. The reason why you must draft your budget to 0 is because when you don't and you just leave the money, like you've seen that, okay, I have a surplus money of 400 Rand, what you find is that you end up spending that 400 Rand on something that you could have avoided. So that's why it's important to draft your budget to 0. So account for every single Rand in terms of all the money that comes in. Adjust your budget when necessary and be flexible. It's also good to involve everyone in the household. So if you're being conscious with your finances, involve everyone else that's around you, because maybe you're in a situation where you're a parent and you're this year deciding, okay, we want to pay off the larger debt that we have. And then you have a child who comes, oh, but I have a camping trip or I have this excursion at school. Your child won't be conscious of, okay, mom or dad is looking forward towards paying off debt. They're going to look at, why is mom not helping me with this want or this expense? So that's why it's good to also teach the people around you when you are being conscious of your spending. And then always include an entertainment category. So you have to pay yourself. Whether your entertainment category is just eating out or buying clothing every month, always include one. It's important to be good or kind to yourself. When it comes to setting up financial goals, there are 3 types in terms of the terms. So the first is the short-term financial goals. This is usually between 6 to 12 months. So if you're saving for a cell phone, saving for clothes, or to pay off retail accounts, maybe you want to save for car repairs or maintenance of your car, pay off your credit card, pay off any short-term loans such as a payday loan. Those would be the examples. Your medium-term financial goals would usually be between a year and 5 years. So this is when you're saving for a deposit to maybe purchase a house, saving for transfer fees, or maybe you're even saving to purchase a car, saving for furniture, home renovations, etc. Long term, this would be your financial goals that go beyond 5 years. So this would be when you're looking towards paying off a mortgage bond. So as Melanie highlighted, it's important to have an emergency fund. So a budget is crucial because it makes you conscious of where your money is going. But a budget can only work if you consider or incorporate an emergency fund. This is because you don't want to have a situation where you experience an emergency, so you have theft or medical expenses, and now you didn't plan for it, and now you have to go into the money that was intended for other purposes. So this is why it's crucial to incorporate an emergency fund into your budget. So this is a budgeting rule developed by Elizabeth Warren. It is a bit of a reach in terms of the South African climate, but 50% of your income should go to needs, 30% to wants and 20% to savings. So this is something to work towards. Although we find that we're not necessarily here, we find that our expenses or needs are actually 60%, and then our wants are maybe 40%, and then we don't have savings. That's where we need to look towards putting that 20% towards the savings. So just quick questions to test my knowledge. There are multiple choice. The first question is, the benefit of having a budget is that it shows if you are spending in an area. It removes guilt associated with a purchase. It makes you see that you have more income. It shows if you are overspending in an area, sorry. What do you think the answer is?
For question one, somebody said D. Somebody as well said D.
Okay.
For question one, yeah.
All right, D is the correct answer.
Okay.
The next question is, what are the consequences of living above your means? A, you will run out of money fast. B, you will not meet your financial goals and objectives. C, you are likely to have stress from money mismanagement. D, all of the above.
Pearl says D. There's D as well from George. D from Gwenya. Tumelo D. Sibanda D as well.
D is the correct answer.
Okay.
The next question is, a budget should ideally be set up annually, weekly, monthly, daily, or when you receive your first salary or allowance?
I have D from Lerox. I
Okay.
have from Pearl, I have A.
Okay.
Anybody else? From Tumelo, we have B. From George, we have A.
So the correct answer is A.
Somewhere
So it's
C and
ideal
C.
to set your budget on an annual basis, because when you're in the beginning of the year and you decide the person that you want to be for the year is someone who regularly consults with their supervisor, attends their classes, is punctual, when you are deciding that new person for you, do the same with your finances. So do the budget for the full year. Yes, you may have deviations, but that's why we said you must adjust and always revisit your budget. So always compare allocated to actual expenses. So a budget would ideally be set up on an annual basis. If you find that you want to be conscious on a daily basis, yes, you can. But when it comes to setting up your budget, set it up on an annual basis. And then the last question for this section is, your budget should account for the following. A, fixed expenses. B, variable expenses. C, money spent on McDonald's. D, bank charges. E, all of the above.
I have E from Pearl, E as well from Sivanda, E from Tumelo, E from
Okay.
Sharon, E
Okay, so
from
E is the
Gwenya,
correct answer.
Laura, and Herbert. Yeah.
Yeah, E is the correct answer. You would need to consider all your expenses. So fixed, those are the expenses that are not changing on a monthly basis. For example, your rent. B, your variable expenses. These are the expenses that are not consistent. So for example, your electricity, your airtime, or your data, if you buy it on a regular. And then it's also good to account for your bank charges. So when you're taking the initiative of being conscious when it comes to your spending, it's good to see how much the banks are charging you. Because if you find that the bank you currently use is actually has high charges, then you have the opportunity to change and make an informed decision when it comes to changing banks. Okay, the second part of my presentation is handling debt. So handling debt requires you to understand how and when to acquire credit and utilize it for effective purposes, as well as ensure that your existing debt is being paid off effectively. So credit is what you acquire, debt is what you're currently handling. That's the difference between the two terms. So important terminology is credit profile. Credit profile is a record of your credit history and credit activities. It includes information about how much credit you have, how you use it, and how your payment history. So credit profile is crucial because it gives credit vendors an idea of your borrowing history. So if you've ever borrowed any money with a licensed credit vendor, it would appear on your credit profile. So it's crucial. Credit profile is crucial for negotiating interest rates, getting a job, and also, it's getting a job as well. And then the second point is your credit score. It is a numerical expression based on a level of analysis of a person's credit files to represent the credit worthiness of an individual. So there are many credit bureaus, all offer one free credit check to every consumer every year. And the different credit bureaus they tend to have a different range in terms of what your credit score will be out of, but the maximum is 999. So commonly, the average in South Africa, or depending on your area, you could check on ClearScore just to see what the average is in your area, whilst also checking your credit score for yourself. Why are so many South Africans in debt? So reckless lending by credit providers. Remember, credit providers are not always going to educate you on the credit you're taking. They're just going to look at your credit worthiness and try to execute that sale. A lack of knowledge on the part of consumers and perhaps a lack of responsibility. So many people do go and acquire credit. Yes, we have to understand that 40% of South Africans do acquire credit to purchase basic necessities such as food, electricity, and paying those basic costs. But we also need to acknowledge that there are people who acquire credit for upgrading a car that they didn't need to, or that they can't necessarily afford, or purchasing clothes that they don't necessarily need. A faltering economy and unsecured lending. So unsecured lending is lending given without collateral. So the opposite of unsecured lending would be secured lending. An example of secured lending would be a mortgage bond or vehicle finance. The reason that is known as secured lending is because there's collateral. So if you do not pay, you default, they can take back the car or repossess the property. A high inflation rate, the selling of credit insurance at high prices. These are all things that put people in debt. And the rising costs of fuel, food, electricity, water, rates, and other basic costs. So the credit facilities in South Africa include the following: payday loans. They are short-term, so you need to pay. It's usually payable within a month. So when you do get paid, you have to pay it back. Payday loans don't come with collateral. So if you find that you're trying to get a payday loan and they're saying that they need some of your assets, it's not allowed. A payday loan is not supposed to require collateral. Store cards, this is with your clothing accounts. So if Mr. Price offers you a credit limit of 2,000 Rand and they're saying you can purchase clothes within their store, that would be an example of a store card. Some of these retail clothing accounts or retail accounts are trying to actually offer credit where you can actually buy other stuff. So like buy electricity. Obviously, it's just to encourage you to have more credit, but what's important on your side is to just check for affordability. Then we have vehicle finance. So this is used to purchase vehicles from the stores. or the vehicle dealership, sorry. And then we have personal or business loans. Business loans are very strict in terms of who they allow to receive the business loan. The reason being is that the risk of you defaulting because your business does not gain the income comes to who they offer business loans to. We also have mortgage bonds. This is to purchase property. Overdraft facilities. So your bank can allow you to use more than what's in your bank, but it's important to note with overdraft facilities, there is a very high charge. We also have revolving credit. So revolving credit is you borrow money, let's say it's 10,000 Rand, and you've used the full 10,000 Rand, and in the next month you find that you pay back 5,000. So now your balance in terms of what you have to pay back the credit vendor is 5,000. With a revolving credit facility, it allows you to keep using that money every time you pay it back. I hope that makes sense. So most of your store cards are revolving credit. And then credit cards are what it is. It's a credit card that allows you to use the money that's available. So what differentiates all these credit facilities is the payment terms as well as the interest. So when we're looking to decide on what of the options is cheap, we need to look at the interest that is being charged. So very important. That's how lenders make their money. And how they determine that interest is by looking at your credit profile. So just a quick,
Miss Mary, there's questions in the chat box.
yes.
So the question is, so is it possible to exist without a credit profile? And
Yes, it's possible. Sorry?
then there is another question. It says, how can one increase their credit score?
Okay, so very good question. The first one about, is it possible to exist without a credit profile? Yes, because remember your credit profile is a history of all your borrowing activities. So all the applications you've made, the approvals in terms of those credit applications, and the current credit applications that you have. So the debt that you're currently paying. Sorry, I have to ask you to repeat the second question.
How can one increase their credit score?
So to increase or improve your credit score, what you'd need to do is you'd need to pay more than what is required in terms of that current credit that you have. So whether it's a store card, and let's say you have a 2,000 Rand limit and the current repayment term on that store card is 200 Rand every month. If you decide not to just pay 200, you want to pay 250, that will improve your credit score because you're paying beyond what's required. If you just pay the minimum, which is required of 200 Rand, that will maintain your score. But if you're looking to improve, then you pay in excess of what's required. So that's going to speak to this example that I'm going to talk about. So this mortgage bond example has two scenarios. So we have Lebogang on the left, who recently purchased a home for 630,000 Rand. She approached FNB Home Finance to assist her with the purchase. She did not pay a deposit and the loan term is 20 years. FNB has charged her a fixed interest rate of 7.3%. Her minimum monthly repayments are 4,998. She pays the minimum repayment required by FNB, therefore her bond will be repaid in full at the end of 20 years. Arletta, on the other hand, has the same facts. So she also purchased a home for 630. FNB offered for 20 years at an interest rate of 7.3%. So her monthly repayment is also 4,998 Rand. However, Arletta decided to stop buying KFC on a monthly basis for lunch every payday and has since decided to pay the extra 200 Rand to the minimum repayment required by FNB. So instead of 4,998, she pays 5,198. So simply because she's paying that 200 Rand in addition, her loan will be paid off in 18 years and 4 months as opposed to 20 years. So something I also want to make you conscious of is that, yes, there's a big pro because you've eliminated your debt sooner, but you also need to take into consideration that these vendors protect themselves with early termination fees. So just read that in the credit terms when you're trying to pay off that debt faster than the initial loan term. So there's a common myth that all debt is bad, and that's not true. I'm here to completely cancel that myth. So there is something called good and bad debt. So good debt refers to debt acquired by a consumer for the purposes of an investment and or to build wealth. Good debt is easily maintainable as there are objectives for the debt acquired. Bad debt, on the other hand, refers to debt acquired by a consumer that does not necessarily improve the consumer's financial circumstance. You find that that person with bad debt could have easily avoided acquiring that debt had they been patient in deciding to save towards that goal as opposed to going to borrow. So to just put these good and bad debt into practical terms, we'll just go through 4 scenarios. And if you could just answer in the chat box. So scenario 1 has Jacob, who's age 22, recently obtained his LLB and was offered a position as a candidate attorney at one of the best law firms in the country to do his articles. Jacob often wore sweats and informal clothing to campus throughout the duration of his studies. He only has one suit, which he received as a graduation gift from his uncle. Jacob has decided to open a clothing account valued at 5,000 Rand in order to purchase decent work clothes. Would you deem that 5,000 Rand clothing account as good or bad debt?
That is a good debt.
It's good debt.
Yes.
That's correct. Scenario 2 has Tabo, who's age 29. He is employed full-time and recently withdrew from his pension fund using the new 2-part retirement system on 26 February 2025. He received an after-tax amount of 14,000 Rand and used the money to purchase a new 65-inch flat-screen TV priced at 36,000. As he was short of the total cost, he decided to use his credit card to pay off the balance. Would you deem this good or bad debt?
I see bad in the chat box. Bad debt. Bad debt from Tumelo. From Precious. Bad debt. From Nora. Bad debt.
Okay.
From
Bad
George.
debt is
Bad debt. George says it's a horrible debt.
bad debt is correct. Okay,
Yeah.
so in scenario 3, we have Teho, who's age 34, lives in a house and recently had her geyser burst. The cost to repair the geyser amounts to 8,000 Rand. Teho does not have an emergency fund, and as such, she has decided to approach a credit vendor offering a loan, so a short-term loan of 8,000 Rand, and charging an interest rate of 37%. Would you consider this good or bad debt?
Tomato says it's a good debt. Herbert says it's a bad debt. Nora says it's a bad debt. Precious says it's a bad debt.
Okay, so this one is meant to elicit some discussion. So the people who are saying bad debt, can you give a reason? And the person who said good, can you also give a reason?
To participants, if you do want to speak, you can just unmute your mic and speak. If you do want to say something, you can just unmute. I've allowed all the mics, so you can just unmute and speak. But Angelina says it's a bad debt because of the interest charged.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Also, Nora says due to the high interest.
Okay, but there's someone who said good. Any
Yes,
chance they want
that
to?
was Tumelo. He says it's good as the inconvenience and extra water costs from best.
Okay. All right. So with this one, we'd go with it being bad debt. But let's just quickly expand on it. So firstly, that interest rate that's being charged is exceptionally high. So how to know whether the credit vendor that you're dealing with is legal is they must be registered with the National Credit Regulator. So you must go onto the National Credit Regulator, check if that company is listed there, and then only then can you continue to contract with them. Reason being, the National Credit Regulator prescribes the maximum interest that can be charged on any type of debt. Last I checked, it is 28.75%. So in this instance, we could have a case of her working with someone who is illegal, hence they are charging such an interest rate. We find many people in desperate situations going to these people because they need that fast money quick, but they don't consider this fact that if you're dealing with an illegal vendor, they could have illegal measures to recover their money from you. So it's very important to bear that in mind. In terms of tackling this as good debt, I would say in the sense of using a credit card or using credit for an emergency is not bad. It's okay. If you find that you haven't built that emergency fund, you don't have savings at the moment, then maybe you can consider using credit as an emergency fund. It's just crucial that when you decide to use credit, be smart about which type of credit you use. So don't just go for the loan when you could use a credit card. Look at the interest rates. So which one is offering you the lower interest? Which one is offering you a more reasonable payment term? These are all things you'd need to consider. So yes, this is bad, especially because of that interest rate. This person is probably an unscrupulous lender, which we have many in South Africa. So something to just take note of. Scenario 4 has Joey, who's age 22, recently graduated from the University of Johannesburg. He managed to secure permanent employment at a company very close to his new apartment. So it's a 5-minute walk, and he earns a stable salary. He was contacted by a credit vendor that offered him a credit card that provides him with a credit limit equivalent to his net salary. In other words, his net salary is 15,000 Rand and the credit limit offered is 15,000 Rand as well. He has decided to use the credit card to purchase groceries valued at 4,000 Rand, and he made a 2 months worth of an advance payment on the rental at his current apartment. So that added to 9,000 Rand. He used the remaining 2,000 to spend on an expensive dinner for his family to celebrate his new job. Would you consider this good or bad debt? And why? If the why is making you nervous, you could just decide whether you think it's good or bad. Okay, so I'll answer this one. Um, so if we're going to look at whether this is good or bad debt, let's dissect his expenses, right? So he got this credit limit of 15,000 Rand. So he was just offered it and decided to take it. So that's something we must take note of. The second thing is that he used 4,000 Rand of that credit to purchase groceries. Groceries are they disappear. So when it comes to credit, it's ideal not to use it on something that disappears. Because when you do the budget of now trying to be conscious of your spending, and you're like, okay, what can I account for when it comes to the money I borrowed? You can't account for groceries because it's no longer there. So ideally, don't use credit to purchase groceries. Second, he paid 2 months in advance on his rental for his apartment. That adds no value to him in the sense that it does not improve his credit score because it's on a rental. So it's on a lease agreement. It's not with a credit vendor. So making an advance payment does not help him in terms of improving any type of credit score. It has no impact on his credit score. He could decide that if he's struggling with discipline in terms of paying his rental, then yes, maybe he could consider this. But if he doesn't have any issues with discipline and he pays his rental on a norm, then it's okay to just follow the normal minimum payment of 4.5 on his rental. So you don't benefit from paying rent in advance. It's only beneficial had this been his apartment and it was a mortgage bond. But then the question would be, why would you obtain new credit to pay off existing credit? So you need to also tackle that. And then the last expense was he used 2,000 Rand to spend on an expensive dinner for his family to celebrate his new job. So he used this money to do something he wouldn't do on a norm, because he's chosen to spend it on the expensive dinner simply because he's acquired this new credit. So in overall, this would be considered bad debt. So spending mistakes people make is that they live beyond their means. They live to please people around them. They take out unnecessary debt, and they lack financial discipline and financial objectives.
Sorry, Ms. Mary, there's a hand up
Oh,
by
yes.
Leroux.
Yes.
You can unmute your mic and speak.
Hi. I just wanted to ask, will we still be discussing where to find scholarships and like funding opportunities?
Yes,
Yes.
we will be discussing on that. Miss Andrea will be facilitating that topic once Miss Mary is done. Yes, we will be discussing that as well.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay, you may proceed. Thank you.
All right, so blacklist is a term that's no longer widely used in South Africa. People now make reference to a negative listing or an adverse listing on their credit report. So this is when you miss a payment on a credit or credit agreement that you have. So you missed the payment, you skipped it. Then it'll affect your credit profile and have an effect on your credit score. So it will appear on your credit score. So it's very important. To some degree, if you miss too many payments or depending on the credit terms, you will find that they can put you on a negative listing because of that. So be very careful when it comes to handling debt. So debt relief options in South Africa. So debt review is governed by the National Credit Act. So this is an instance where you receive consistent income, you are a South African citizen, and you find that you're struggling with paying off your debt. So you're overly indebted. You can apply to go under debt review, where you'll have a debt counselor appointed who will negotiate your repayment plan with your creditors and have you pay something that's more reasonable. They also negotiate your interest rate on your existing debt. So that's the thing with debt review. Applying to go under debt administration is important to know it's governed by the magistrate's court. It does take longer than debt review, and it's only allowed if you have debt below 50,000 Rand. So going under administration, the big con is that you will stay without being able to obtain more credit for a long period, because you'll find that when they restructure the repayment plan, they'll help you pay really low repayments towards your debt, and the interest rate remains the same. So they don't negotiate the interest rate. Going under sequestration, this is the last resort. This is when you find that your liabilities exceed your assets. So now you need a trustee appointed who will now sell your assets in order to pay off your liabilities. With sequestration, you even end up with a new tax number when your estate goes under sequestration. It's important to know under all options, if you're married in community of property, your spouse will also have to join in, as it's a single estate that goes under the same debt relief option. So if you're sequestrated, your spouse will also be sequestrated. And then how is this session applicable to my life as a student currently? So now it's important to note that when you cancel your studies after the fee payment is due, you will have a cost implication. You have to pay what's due to the university. So for instance, according to the fee booklet for 2025, 60% of your fees are due at the end of April and 100% is due at the end of August. If you cancel your studies for any reason in May, you know that you are required to pay that 60% payment. The reason I'm emphasizing this is because student finance does find that students cancel after the fee payment is due, and then they think that there's nothing that's required of them. And then 2 years or some time goes along, you find that they've already handed your debt over to collectors and they'll call you to kind of make a payment plan. So it's just important, if you cancel, look at those dates. Every year they do make some changes. And then in terms of budgeting, if you received a lump sum from NSFAS or any BURSA due to delayed onboarding, so there are students who experience delays in the beginning of the year, so they weren't able to receive their allowance immediately. If you found that you received a big allowance, then it's just important to budget, because if that big allowance was based on the delay, just know it's not going to be the same every month. So if you're budgeting, remember that it's going to be a change in terms of your income or the stipend you receive the following month. And then just something that they also highlighted at the Student Finance Office is the implications of using pictures instead of scanned documents when uploading content for the BURSA. Some of these BURSAs are very strict, want you to upload actual documents and not pictures. So they can delay or there can be issues with your onboarding just because of that. And then with AODs, it's important to know that it's not allowed for first-year students. International students, they've newly decided this year that they will allow for them to apply for AODs for outstanding debt that's below 10,000 Rand. And then if your debt has already been handed over to debt collectors, you cannot apply for an AOD. Lastly, implications of an AOD on a student's credit profile is that there are none. So there are no negative or any implications of applying for an AOD on your credit profile. So just to quickly test the knowledge, I'll quickly go through this one. The first question is, what gets us into debt? A, living within our means. B, spending without plans. C, obtaining credit. Or D, all of the above. The correct answer is spending without plans. So A is correct. You're supposed to live within or below your means. C, you are allowed to obtain credit. Just be smart in what you're obtaining. So that's why those two are not correct. And then the next question is, it would be best to have a high credit score. True or false? That's true. The higher your credit score, the less risky you are when it comes to your credit worthiness. 3, a credit report is a report showing a borrower's history of how well they paid their credit bills. That is true. 4, to identify expensive debt, we look at the interest rate being charged and the repayment term. That is false. We only look at the interest rate when we want to identify which debt is expensive. We look at the interest rate, not the repayment term. So interest rate will give an indication of which debt is the most expensive. And then just a quote to bear in mind when it comes to your finances is that a goal without a deadline is just a dream. So whether you're saving towards buying a car, buying a cell phone, set a deadline, because that will keep you accountable and ensure that you actually do what you can to deliver or meet that financial goal. Thank you so much. If there are any questions, you may now ask me.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mary Ann. Really appreciate it. You giving more insights on financial literacy. If there is any further questions for her, so that we're also running out of time, we can move on to Miss Andrea. She will just be discussing on finding scholarship and opportunities. Thank you. I don't know if there's any further questions either for Miss Melanie or Miss Mary Ann before I can proceed to Miss Andrea. Okay, so once again, I would like to appreciation to Miss Melanie and to Miss Mary Ann for those insights and giving us your expertise within the financial literacy. We really appreciate you and thank you for honoring our invite and thank you for supporting the Research Capacity Development Unit. In that regard, I would like to move over to Miss Andrea. And I just wanted to ask as well, please share your presentation slides. We will be posting those on our model communities together with the recording as well. Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. I would just like to thank the RCD colleagues for giving me this opportunity. And I would also like to thank the previous presenters for those insightful presentations. I think it is much needed, specifically for postgraduates.
Okay. Thank you again, Miss Andrea. Before you begin, I'd just like to quickly introduce you. So Miss Andrea is a research and development scientist specializing in specializing in drug design and targeted drug delivery systems with expertise in computation, experimental chemistry and biochemistry and microbiology. In addition, data analytics and high-profile computing are employed. Apologies for that. Just okay. Computing are employed to optimize small molecule drugs, conjugates for healthcare application. Currently pursuing her PhD in chemical sciences at the University of Johannesburg. Her work integrates linked protein interaction studies, organic synthesis, and in vitro testing to enhance drug efficacy and safety. Previously, she worked as a research scientist at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, collaborating with biotech partners to design targeted therapeutics. Recognized for academic excellency and scientific innovation, she is passionate about translating computational insights into real-world solutions. So you may now proceed, Ms. Andrea. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence, for that wonderful bio and introduction. I'm just going to share my screen and tell me if you can see this. Are you able to see this?
Yes, we can now see your screen. Thank you so much.
Okay, perfect. Lawrence, would you be able to help me if there's any questions in the chat box because I can't see the chat box now?
Yes, I will be monitoring the chat box. No problem. Thank you.
All right, so I just want to present today on unconventional income streams for postgraduate students. And just a little bit about me. I'm currently a PhD candidate writing up my thesis, and through my academic journey, I have relied heavily on funding. And in my honors year, I applied for the NRF Scarce Skills Development Scholarship, and I was awarded that bursary. I then joined the CSIR as an intern, and at that time, the CSIR had studentships for both master's and PhD. So I applied for the CSIR master's studentship and I was awarded that. And currently, I am on the DSI CSIR Interbursary Program Support. So approximately 75% of postgraduate students struggle with financial stress, and this is because balancing academic workload with financial responsibilities can be quite challenging, it can be quite taxing, and depending on scholarships and stipends or family support may not be sustainable in the long run. Therefore, there is a need for flexible and reliable income sources that do not hamper your academic progress. So, just a disclaimer, we are exploring unconventional income streams. However, this is subject to approval from your supervisor, from your faculty, from your department. So I think the first thing to do would be to check various websites regularly and set alert notifications. Here I'm talking about LinkedIn, X, Facebook, Instagram. Depending on your network on these platforms, they will, like if you are a friend to what can I say, Department of Science and Innovation or any other government institution or companies, they would regularly post regarding bursaries and or opportunities on these sites. I would also advise to check institutional offices, to check their notice boards to see if anything is available regarding bursary opportunities. So the Postgraduate Fund Management Unit is part of the Postgraduate School and is located in the Akanya building here on the Kingsway campus. So I would visit them to explore their bursaries, the options that they have available. So the next point is institutional and departmental bursaries. So institutional, I'm talking here about the University of Johannesburg. On the website, they have several bursary offerings, and you should check them out. Departmental bursaries, I'm going to use myself as an example. I am in the Department of Chemical Sciences, and they have something called the Merit Bursary. A Merit Bursary is a once-off bursary. However, it is very helpful specifically in paying for registration fees. Also, something to explore is supervisor recommended opportunities. So what I'm talking about here is that sometimes your supervisor may obtain funding from private sector in South Africa and may even obtain funding from international bodies. Example, Wellcome Trust or Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So it's very important to have a conversation with your supervisor to understand if the research group you're going into is funded. And then you can also look at government and industry related bursaries. Government, I think the first one is NRF. NRF, if you go onto the website, there are several bursary opportunities which you should take advantage of. And industry related bursaries will be specific to your discipline or your industry, maybe Sasol or Investec. You need to look at do some homework, look at the companies that offer the bursaries, and look at their requirements. Also, a very important point is to check the rules and regulations regarding additional bursary limits. We may find that the primary bursary that you obtain may not be sustainable, and you are looking to supplement that primary bursary. However, you please check with your supervisor, your department. You can also check with the postgraduate fund management unit on the upper limit of that bursary. And again, I'm stressing that this is dependent on your supervisor approval, departmental approval. So selling your skills. This is another avenue that you as a postgraduate can explore. If you are knowledgeable in a particular area and can teach, you can explore offering tutoring as a service, also practical demonstrations. What I mean here is within the science discipline, we have the theory and we have the practical. So the theory for us is that we attend lectures and then we do have a practical session. And more often than not, we do need assistance setting up those practical demonstrations. So you can explore that with your supervisor and your department. You can also engage with lecturers and supervisors to identify if there are any other departmental opportunities. If you find yourself very good at proofreading and public speaking, you can market these skills. However, first you need to check with your supervisor and department if you can post the adverts on institutional notice boards or student forums. My next point is that some departments offer financial incentives for students who publish manuscripts. So I know that the anthropology department does offer an incentive to postgraduates for research papers. However, this might differ from department to department. So you need to check with your supervisor and department if this applies to you. Also, you can explore or seek e-tutoring opportunities externally. And you need to check your bursary rules on allowable working hours, because remember that the opportunities or options that you are exploring for additional income shouldn't hamper your academic progress. Another avenue that you can explore is getting paid for your opinion or participation. So there are research students that seek participants for their studies and they offer financial compensation. So your first port of call would be to check the University of Johannesburg, the portal. Under the ULink tab, you will look for the notices for paid participation opportunities. You can expand your search to local businesses, associations, and hospitals that may conduct studies or focus groups and offer incentives for your feedback. You can also look at websites that offer paid research participation. However, there are two things to note here. Please verify the authenticity to avoid scams, and also ensure that you fully understand the potential risks before participating in these studies. Lastly, participating in conferences and competitions. So there are cash reward prizes for winners in academic competitions. Also, participating in conferences, presenting at conferences is often a requirement during your postgraduate journey, and there is funding available through institutional, departmental, and bursary-linked sources. However, you would need to check with your supervisor and department regarding the funding for conferences. You can stay updated through email communication from the University of Johannesburg, your faculty, and your department. I will also advise that you consult your supervisor for external opportunities, as your supervisor has been in the field for a number of years and their network is much larger than yours and may be able to provide options for external opportunities. Lastly, the Research Capacity Development is very excited to present 3 competitions this year. Firstly, the Visualize Your Thesis competition, which will be taking place in June, and it is currently open to all enrolled postgraduate researchers, MPhil, Masters by Research, PhD, and professional doctorate programs. We also have our 3-minute thesis competition, and its eligibility is for PhDs and professional doctorate researchers. So both competitions have very exciting prizes. The first prize is 10,000 Rand. Your second prize is 7,000 Rand. Your third prize is 5,000. And there's also a People's Choice Award for 3,000. We also want to use this opportunity to let you know about our research conference taking place in October, at the end of October. And this is an opportunity to expand your network and to collaborate with other researchers. So our research conference, you have two opportunities. You can either take part in the poster presentation or the oral presentation, and we are looking forward to your applications as we want to foster collaborations and networking. For more information, you can email us on rcdinquiries@uj.ac.za. We are also available if you log on to the U-Link and navigate to the Moodle tab. You can find all the information at the Moodle tab and also the RCD website. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Miss Andrea, regarding that presentation, finding scholarship and opportunities. Dr. Pillay, I see you have your hand up. You may speak if you want to collaborate more, yeah?
Thank you, Andrea, for sharing the unconventional ways. But just to reiterate, the Postgraduate Fund Management Unit did have a workshop with us in the beginning of February, if I'm not mistaken, where they presented all the scholarship opportunities for the year in terms of formal offerings. So you can go ahead and view the recording on our Moodle communities, or as Ms. Andrea mentioned, you can visit the postgraduate school to find out more. We also do post the announcements when they do have calls for funding coming out, because now they will be posting for next year's funding. So keep an eye out for that. But again, to reiterate some of the things, I think that were not actually communicated in the beginning of the year by UJ, or they were, and then registration was delayed, sorry, is that for those of you who are aware of our Moodle communities, you will not be receiving emails from us anymore. So UJ has now implemented the mobile app, so you would have to download that to receive notifications, just in case anyone's thinking they're not seeing our emails anymore. And then, yes, I've also posted the link in the chat for the RCD events. And that's me just adding 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Dr. Pillay, just adding further. So in closing, I would just like to thank all our facilitators today, Miss Melanie, Miss Mary Ann, and Miss Andrea, for your insights regarding financial literacy and finding scholarship opportunities. Here at the RCD unit, we really appreciate you for honoring our invite and for giving this presentation. I don't know if there is any further questions from participants before maybe we can close these sessions. And just to add on as well, please note that I have posted the evaluation link announcement in the chat. We just advise you to please request you to fill it in. To all the participants, please kindly fill in the evaluation link, and I sent in the chat session, Miss Melanie, I think she added something that, yeah, she said, please complete the evaluation and please suggest if you could add anything as well for future workshops, if anything that you would want to be added or anything that you feel should be added on this kind of workshop in the evaluation form. Thank you so much. I don't know if there's anything further that you want to add Miss Melanie, Miss Mary Ann, or Miss Andrea before we may close the session. Thank you. Okay, not a problem. Thank you, Miss Melanie. And thank you again, Miss Mary Ann. And thank you again to Miss Andrea. And thank you to all the participants for joining us today. We really appreciate your presence in all these workshops. And again, I will express our appreciation from the Research Capacity Development Unit. So in that regard, I will be closing the session if there is no any further questions or comments from anybody. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of your day further. Thank you.